Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony, he's Ron, and together we're about to uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, let's start with that weird cabinet meeting that took place yesterday in the cabinet office, I presume, at the White House. It was another one of those kind of North Korea style or Russian style sycophantic roundtables where everybody celebrates Donald Trump. The only time he was actually awake, though, was for those kind of sycophant moments. The rest of the time, he was either asleep or passing out or nodding off or, like, disappearing. What did you make of it?
Yeah, these are so strange. We've never had public cabinet meetings in the history of the United States because they're typically private affairs where people hash things out in a room. But for Trump, everything is a show. Everything's a reality show. It's just sort of like the set of The Apprentice. And it's weird, you know, how it's open to the public, the cameras are there. He starts out giving his remarks. That went about like 45 minutes where he took some questions. He was awake for that part. Then it was like, it's time for everybody to go around the room. And in theory, they're supposed to be giving an update on the work that they're doing. And that's usually part of it. But then they spend, obviously, another huge part of it praising Trump about how everything is wonderful because of them and because of him, and all of the work that their agency is accomplishing would not be possible without his leadership. And these are just the glazing sessions. And what was funny is in the past, typically Trump would be awake for those because he wanted to hear himself being praised. But he was up until past midnight posting over 100, I think it was 158 posts on Truth Social. He posted between 9 p.m. and midnight. And then he was up at 5 a.m. cranking back up more posts. So it looks like he got like 5 hours of sleep. So he proceeds to fall asleep. And during the whole second hour of the cabinet meeting, he was sleeping probably 80% of the time. What was funny to me was watching it live was like the only thing that could get him to perk up and like, because he would just be eyes closed, slack mouth, completely out. Not the like little nodding outs that we've seen in the past. Like he's just out for like minutes at a time while they're talking to him. And it was only when they would mention his name, like they would go da 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 da, and President Trump, and he would go, you know, he'd hear his name, and that would wake him up for like 2 seconds, and then he'd go right back to it. And it's just like something about like for him, like he could probably be in a coma and you could say his name and he would come out of it. You know, that's the narcissism. I don't know what it is. I'm not a doctor.
Let's take a look at some of these clips. Howard Lutnick was my favorite when he started doing the praising thing. I was just like,
he's good at it.
Well, it's like a parody, isn't it? Like it's almost not real. And I was thinking, all those people sitting around the table, like they must be listening to this knowing that they're all having to play along for the sake of the regime. And it's so unhealthy for them, for the country, and also for the world looking on. Let's take a look.
Is a year ago today, I was working on transition with President Trump, right? To build the greatest cabinet ever for the greatest president ever. And as I sit here today, I can't be more proud of how you did it, sir. You've created the greatest cabinet. It is a joy to be at this table.
Amen. You know, one thing we will.
Trump almost doesn't know that he's like sundowning. The fact that he's slumped in the chair and kind of half listening. If he had all of his faculties, he would know that that does not look good on camera or for the world stage. And so this is part of his kind of slow decline, I would say.
Well, when you're in this news bubble that he's in, you know, where he just watches Fox all the time and not much else, you know, Fox doesn't show any of that stuff. Fox is not going to show him asleep. So you wonder how much of it has he actually seen? I would say, well, here's what I do. After every time he falls asleep at an event, I always do Google searches of the media. I usually will wait like 4 hours later, then 8 hours later, then the next day. Because, you know, this is something that's been going on for a long time. And we've covered it extensively, going back to when he was falling asleep in court. And we would say he is falling asleep. And it was so hard to get any mainstream media outlet to say that, to even talk about it, to even mention that he fell asleep or nodded off. And so what I have noticed is it's a little bit more each time, a little bit more. So this morning, New York Times actually put out a story, shockingly, that said the headline was he appeared to be struggling to keep his eyes open, something like that. It was like very, very watered down language. And I responded back to the reporter. I'm like, wow, at least they're saying something. At least they're acknowledging that he closed his eyes for an extended period of time, but they still won't say he fell asleep. They won't go that far. And it's always interesting it's usually, like I said, foreign media, like Daily Beast, Midas, some of the smaller US outlets, liberal, the Huffington Post, but mainstream media, you're very fortunate to get a Politico, Washington Post, AP. Very rarely will they do anything like this on Trump.
But that's partly because of their complicity with this regime. You know, they profit from Trump. They are under pressure. They're kind of blackmailed by Trump. I mean, there's so many layers to it that they just can't go there. And it's really important that people understand that in the US, there really is very little in the way of impartial media in that corporate space. I mean, I was actually watching CNN for about 10 minutes this morning, and they had a Republican operative on, which I haven't really seen happen in the past. So things are obviously changing there with the ownership. And she was just doing all the Republican talking points and all the MAGA stuff. And I was like, how is this on CNN? Like, it just shouldn't be happening. There was no pushback. I want to show the clip of Linda McMahon, though. Of course, she's she's like the WWF chief who's now running or deconstructing the education department. She seems, whenever she talks, she always seems to care nothing for education and know nothing about education. Let's take a look at Trump. Yeah, let's take a look at Trump falling asleep during her closing remarks.
I can say, sir, that we are moving to return education to the states and to bring the level of education back up, making sure our students can read, are reintroducing the science of reading in schools, and going into next year,
I don't know what I find more amusing is her disinterest in her own subject or Donald Trump's disinterest in the world in that moment.
There was a couple of funny parts to that, which was like she went on Fox last night after that meeting and was bragging about, I told the president this and I told the president this and he really cares. And it's like, you know, we didn't show her whole 5-minute spiel there, but he slept through the whole thing. Like he never opened his eyes during her, because I think some things like Hegseth, you know, he kind of wanted to hear a little bit about what Hegseth said, because that was like his first public remarks about the ship thing. And so I think he kind of tuned in a little of that, and he tuned into maybe Lutnick a little bit because Lutnick's loud and he was sitting, but by halfway through, he's not interested in anything McMahon has to say or most of the other people in that room, the HUD secretary. Like he could care less about HUD. He doesn't want to even care. Like, does Trump want an update on what the HUD secretary is doing? He could care less. RFK, same thing. He kind of like tuned out for that too, because he didn't really care about that. But the other funny part is like how as they go around the room, they're almost trying to like one up each other, you know, on how much they fawn over him. So it gets like more preposterous, the praise does, the longer it goes.
I mean, the thing is, what's difficult for me anyway, like as an outsider to process, is that it is funny, of course it is, but it's also deeply tragic and very dangerous, because the complicity from everybody around the table is such that they are contributing to the growth and the strength of this authoritarian regime. And it's also very much the case that in history with an authoritarian, when they become in some way incapacitated, that's when the people around them kind of step up and really try and help hide that, or they lean more into the praising and the support. And I think that's what we're seeing now. Maybe they realize that he's kind of starting to go downhill, or obviously going downhill. And so they have to ramp up that kind of armor to protect the regime.
Well, you know, this is something that I'm hearing increasingly more and more from Republicans about. We heard it from Marjorie Taylor Greene last week, but it's not just her. It's, the campaign consultant, most of whom will speak on background, they won't, it'll be all anonymous. But more and more, I read more and more articles from them stating that they're worried about this situation. They're worried that he is totally surrounded by people who just tell him what he wants to hear. Lies, mostly, that everything's great, everything's fine, everybody's happy. And because that's what he wants. But what they're concerned with is that he's not really understanding some of the issues that they have, especially going into the midterms, and that he just thinks like everything's fine and everything's great. We don't need to change anything. And every time, I can tell you, every time he says like prices are down, everything's good, affordability is a hoax, I see hundreds of Republican posts saying, man, if that's our message for the midterms, we are screwed. So I think they are recognizing, even on the right, that this is becoming a problem for them politically, that the guy is just being fed BS all day long by the people around him.
Do you want to see one more clip of him falling asleep?
I watched the whole thing live, so sure.
Okay. Well, this is the Marco Rubio one. Rubio, of course, is increasingly being pushed out of any kind of international negotiations.
Rubio's sitting right next to him. Right?
I know. Let's take a look.
War started. It never would have happened if you'd been president. But this war is going on, and the president is trying to end it. Not because, listen, we got a million things to focus on in the world as a country, but he's the only leader in the world that can help end it. And that's why even as we speak to you now, Steve Woodcock is in Moscow trying to find a way to end this war, to save lives of 9,000 people, Mr. President, as you know, are dying every week. More people.
The irony of saying this guy is the only guy trying to fix it. Meanwhile, this guy's like, it's just awful. Like, this is awful, Ron.
So we know, like, when the Ukrainian delegation came, they met with Rubio, Jared Kushner, and Witkoff, and everybody in Europe was saying, like, thank God Rubio's there, because I mean, even though they don't completely trust Rubio because they think he's kind of a little bit of a worm, he at least kind of somewhat is taking their interests into account in this whole equation, whereas Kushner and Witkoff are just looking for business deals in Moscow.
Well, at least Rubio works for the State Department. I mean, he's like the only representative from the State Department.
The only legitimate. Yeah,
there's no one else there.
Right. The other two people are basically private citizens who are just going over there making deals. So when I heard like who's going to go to, so they meet with Ukraine now the delegation is going to go to Moscow. I said, okay, well, here we go. And then I find out, oh no, Rubio's not going. It's only Witkoff and Kushner. I'm like, what? Tweedledee and Tweedledum are going over there? Like, no diplomatic experience, no real government experience. I mean, unless you want to count what Kushner did in term one. No. But I mean, and Kushner has had nothing to do with the administration this time around. He said he wasn't going to have anything to do with anything. And now all of a sudden he's going to parachute into the middle of this. And then I'm like, why isn't Rubio going? And then I look and, well, here he's at this cabinet meeting praising Trump. And it's like, what I wanted to say to him is, why aren't you over there negotiating? Why isn't anyone from the State Department over there negotiating? Why is it these two bumpkins? So, I guess because, he was needed to be there to praise Trump.
Let's talk about the situation in the kind of Caribbean Sea and off the coast of Venezuela with these boats, which is really the major story that's hit many of the headlines, not just in the US, but right around the world, with a second strike on a boat. There's video of it. You see the drone, the US drone, hit the boat with humans in it. They don't all die. 2 of them are still alive. I mean, it's harrowing footage to have to see. And then a second strike is ordered. And of course, the controversy now is the second strike is, first strike was illegal enough. The second strike is undoubtedly a war crime. And Hegseth's trying to kind of distance himself from it. Trump's trying to distance himself from Hegseth. They're both now blaming this admiral. I mean, this is really is putting the US into a place where, because they're being referred to as extrajudicial killings, and of course the ICC and various countries are going to start causing issue with this. We're also now getting family members of the deceased making official complaints. It's like Trump completely forgot that there were actually humans involved in this so-called war on drugs, and then in the next breath he's pardoning a kind of infamous drug trafficker. So let's start with Hegseth and the excuses. How do you read this?
Well, Washington Post was the first one who broke the story, and they tried to go with their usual BS, which is, well, fake news, it's all lies, it's all not true, sort of denied it even happened. And Trump was asked about it the first time, and he said, I don't believe that Hegseth would do that. I don't think he would be involved in that. He told me it didn't happen. That was like the night the story broke. Trump said that on Air Force One, either coming from or going to one of his golf outings in Palm Beach. I don't know if the flight was going south or headed back, but he was on the plane when he was first asked about this. And he said, I talked to Pete. He said it didn't happen. But then I think what happened there is that didn't satisfy the military establishment, the generals who are very concerned about a lot of this stuff boomeranging back on them, and actually Republicans in Congress, because I think that Republicans on the armed services committees of the Senate and the House, and I think the reason is because those members are very plugged into the military hierarchy, and they speak to the generals, the admirals, the staff officers all the time. And I'm talking about both the Republicans and the Democrats on the armed services committees. And I think that the feedback, it's pretty obvious, the feedback they were getting from those military commanders is, this is not fake news. This is a big deal. And we are all very, very worried. They're all worried that and was reporting on this the last couple of days. They're all worried that something's going to go down, not just with this, but with other things as well. And they are going to be thrown under the bus by following orders of Hegseth. And so then when we find out that there's more to it and that Republicans scheduled committee hearings, Roger Wicker actually requested all of the audio video, which we do not have. We have not seen the full, complete audio video of everything to find out whether what Hegseth knows, what he doesn't know, all of that. When he actually requests that, it's like the first time any Republican congressional committee has decided to try and do an investigation of anything. And it was on this. So I think that caused them to sort of change course and stop denying it. And then they came out, and Hegseth at the cabinet meeting said, okay, he's got a whole new story now. And the new story is basically to throw this admiral under the bus and to say, the first strike happened. I watched it live. He couldn't deny that because he said on Fox that night back in September that he watched it live, and I resurfaced the clip and posted on social media. So he couldn't deny that he was watching it. But what he said was, I watched the first strike. I thought it was over, and then I got busy and walked away, and I stopped watching. So I didn't actually see the second strike. It was the admiral who saw this, apparently the survivors, and he was the one who ordered the second strike. So clearly what we see now is the new defense, which is, hey, you know what? It wasn't me. I didn't see it. I didn't know about it. The admiral took it on himself to do this, and I have his back, you know. And I can't believe that anyone in the military at this point thinks that Hegseth has their back.
Well, they're all about to double-cross each other, aren't they? And they're going to land the admiral in it as the first point of call, and then Trump's going to go to war with Venezuela just to distract from all of these issues. Let's take a look at Hegseth trying to kind of talk his way out of this.
We're proud to do it.
So you didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike?
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded in fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes. about the judgment that they made. I wrote a whole book on this topic because of what politicians and the press does to warfighters.
I mean, no one's buying it. The irony of him wanting to change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War means it's now perfect for us to call it the Department of War Crimes. I'm sure you've picked up on that one. A lot of people have been saying it on the internet. Let's look at the next clip of him. This is where he also kind of does this backtrack about having seen it and then disappearing. He tried to claim that there was like 2 hours between the first strike and the second strike, and that does not ring true either. Let's take a look.
Now, the first couple of strikes, as any leader would want, you want to own that responsibility. So I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call after getting all the information and make sure it's the right strike. That was September 2nd. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into that, building that case and understanding that. A lot of people providing information. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people. We will.
Yeah, Trump's still falling asleep during that, despite the level of importance surrounding it. How's this going to play out in your view?
It's really going to come down to Bradley, and I think Bradley is full MAGA guy. You know, he's definitely I would think, I don't know his politics, but you know, it seems like he seems to be a full-on Trump supporter Republican, which is not that surprising. But the question is, you know, there has to be audio and video of this whole exchange. And if Roger Wicker is really serious about getting this and bringing some of these facts to light without divulging how, you know, what the source of their intelligence was that led up to this, they don't need to do that. But what he's saying makes no sense. An hour or 2 hours? So it was an hour later that they saw survivors clinging to wreckage, and then they blew up those survivors. That is a war crime. There's even Republicans are acknowledging in Congress that would be a war crime, but they're saying, I don't believe that would happen. I guess the cover story, if I'm kind of reading between the lines and parsing what he's saying there, the cover story is going to be that the second strike was because the boat hadn't sunk and they were trying to finish off the rest of the boat. But look, there's audio of this stuff. Clearly, if they were going after survivors, and by the way, somebody very close to this operation leaked all of this to the Washington Post. So that means that there's somebody very close to this that isn't cool with what went down.
Right.
Not happy about it. Because
I would
how
think
else
that
would
most
Washington
people would
Post
not be
know?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how else would they know about it? So the question is Wicker and is Turner with the House Armed Services Committee, the Republican there, are they really going to get to the bottom of this and do a serious investigation? I think that they will, and I only say that because I think that the rank and file career military officers want that. It's not really about politics for them. It's about their own survival and safety and being free from being prosecuted by war crimes or by the next administration. So I think they want this to come out. My guess is they probably hope it results in Hegseth being gone and a new Secretary of Defense coming in who's not going to put them in this position.
Is there a recording of the Situation Room? Do they also have like a kind of black box recorder on a flight deck? You know, like is there actual audio or video recording of commands being made?
Well, there should be. You would think so, because they're probably not all necessarily sitting in the same room for this. They're probably communicating either on a secure video or audio feed, especially because this has to be communicated out. So what has to happen is this is being communicated out to a ship somewhere, and that ship commander is another very important witness. All right, that whoever that captain of the ship was is they're got to be he's got to be relaying things back to DC, to the Pentagon, back to the ship. And so there's multiple layers. There's also enlisted people and staff people that are around. So it's not just limited to like 2 or 3 people. There's probably 50 people who know exactly what went down. So that's why I say, if the Republican committee chairs are serious about doing an investigation, I think this will all come out, and I think Hegseth will be in deep trouble. The only question is, are they serious? And that's why I say I think so. I think so, because I also think that Wicker at this point is fed up with this administration on many levels, Ukraine, other things. It is not just this. And I think he's probably had enough of covering for them. And he's not going to throw Trump under the bus, but he might throw Hegseth under the bus.
Interesting. Because at the end of the day, Hegseth is just like a Fox, former Fox News presenter, and it's his kind of military service doesn't really count for much when you're looking. He's been promoted too far too quickly to have any respect.
But you see, the game here though is like Trump is like, I don't know anything about it, talk to Pete. And then Pete's like, it wasn't me, talk to the admiral. So what is the admiral going to be like? I was relying on what the ship captain told me, or what the intel people, or CIA, or, I mean, it's like everybody's sort of passing the buck. It's got to stop somewhere at some point. But Trump has done a pretty masterful job at just sort of like, the ignorance is bliss, like, I don't know, man. This has nothing to do with me. And under normal circumstances, the buck would stop with the president. But I mean, it seems like everybody, including us, is completely putting the focus on Hegseth because we can't stand Hegseth so much. And clearly he is lying and he is responsible. But in the past, this would be the responsibility of the president. But it seems like he's escaping culpability here.
We should remind people that in any civilized democracy, this scandal would have brought down not just the Secretary of Defense, but probably the president too. Like they would have been forced to resign, or, there would have been a serious ramification. And here it's just like, let's just brush over it, start some other drama like, a mainland war with Venezuela as a distraction and a kind of legal loophole to try and then kind of proactively claim that these strikes were necessary.
The other part of it, the main Republican talking point on this has to go at Democrats who are criticizing it, has been, why are you guys are defending drug traffickers? And they'll say, you're poisoning our kids and people are dying. And how can you defend these people? And, Democrats have always come back with due process and, you can't murder people and it's not right. International law and all those things. And Republicans know in those kind of arguments, they typically win the day as far as majority public opinion. When Democrats are arguing concepts like due process and human rights, and they're arguing they're killing our kids, that argument usually wins. But then Trump completely undercuts their whole argument by pardoning this major Honduran drug trafficker. At the same time, Republicans are all over TV making the argument Democrats are defending drug dealers. Trump pardons a drug trafficker right in the middle of it. So now every Democrat can and is coming back with the retort of, your guy just pardoned a drug kingpin. How can you say I don't care about drug traffickers?
Let's take a look at Trump on Air Force One answering a question from a reporter about why he pardoned this kind of Honduran drug trafficker who was literally about to serve a 45-year sentence and now is out of prison.
Many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden didn't know he was alive, but it was the people that surrounded the resident desk, surrounded Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country. And they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup. And I looked at the facts and I've written it up.
What evidence did you share that he was set up, that he wasn't?
You take a look. I mean, they can say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president or put him in jail. No, that's what it's like.
President, can I just clarify, do you think that you have...
That includes this country, okay? To be honest. I mean, if somebody does something wrong, you put the president of the country in jail. They said it was a Biden setup. It was a Biden administration setup. And you have a big race going on this week, next week. I think it's going to be a very important race. It would be interesting to see Honduras. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really know what they were talking about. They literally had to like jog his memory several times there to get him to kind of come on track with that, which is terrifying and disgraceful. It suggests to me that he isn't really kind of running the pardon office, is he?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, he definitely has nothing to do with that. He just does what they're telling him to do or what people tell him to do. And this is really just like an organized crime operation, these pardons. They're just one more horrible than the next. There was another one that he did this week of a guy who defrauded over 10,000 people, nurses, teachers, small business owners, accountants, of their life savings. It was a Ponzi scheme that the guy ran, and it was like a $1.6 billion Ponzi scheme. Trump not only pardoned the guy after I think he served like maybe a couple months in jail, but he also wiped out all the restitution. So this rich guy doesn't even have to pay back all the victims, and he swindled their life savings. It's like pardoning Bernie Madoff. I mean, it's insane. So what does he say about this drug trafficker? First of all, this guy brought in 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Not himself personally, but he as the president of Honduras facilitated this. He let drug traffickers and drug dealers run wild, let them bring it into the United States, was a cause of a lot of Honduran migrants coming to the United States, which is interesting. Trump complains about people emptying out their prisons and sending them to the United States. That's literally what this guy did. And so, I mean, forget all that. So not only that, one of the main informants against him that was supposed to testify against him was hacked to death in a jail cell with a machete. And the Justice Department believes that this guy ordered the informant to be murdered. So they held him responsible for that. But Trump's story is like, what's the reason for the pardon? Despite the fact that he went through the U.S. justice system, he was convicted by a jury, all that. And he was investigated during the Biden administration, Obama administration, the first Trump administration, and the Biden administration. 3 separate DOJs under 3 separate presidents conducted this investigation and prosecution. So it wasn't just a Biden thing. So what's his reason for the pardon? Well, he says, look, there were just because people were selling drugs in his country doesn't mean he should be responsible for that. And he even drew the analogy to himself. I shouldn't be prosecuted if people are selling drugs in the United States, as if that's what we did. Yeah, we just picked this guy out of a hat. Let's prosecute some Central American president because people are selling drugs in his country. That's just preposterous. It's nonsensical. So that was one half. There was 2 parts to it. One was he said the only reason he was being prosecuted was that. And then he said people in Honduras told him that he was innocent. People in Honduras. Yeah, who? The guy's business partners, the guy's fellow drug dealers, people from his political parties, his family members. Somebody got paid a lot of money.
That's what I was going to say.
Here.
There's got to be a payment.
We don't know.
Here.
We don't know exactly what Trump's angle is here and what he got, but this is a big one. He got something really, really big, and we may not find out for years what it is.
You know, I was shocked when in Trump's first week he pardons the January 6 insurrectionists and rioters, right? So nearly 1,500 people, including Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. And then he goes and pardons John Eastman and all of those kind of fake ledgers, the envelope switchers, And I was like, wow, like surely this is going to make people realize that the criminality just flows through Trump's veins. And then he starts to pardon not just this guy, but a whole bunch of fraudsters, as you describe. And so if you like draw a graph of like the sectors with which Trump is choosing to bring these commutations and pardons about, it basically draws a picture of who Trump is and what Trump's life has been like as a criminal. And it's just it exposes the fact that all the criminals stick together and he's got all of their backs. You know, this is not what presidential pardon power is for. It's supposed to deal with injustice, people on death row, like various things where humanity is at the core. And this is basically just the criminal getting the keys to the prison and unlocking the door and letting everybody out.
So the J6 pardons and his co-conspirator pardons, I understood them from a political standpoint of him trying to appease his base, because they all wanted that. The MAGA base, they wanted all of them pardoned. But a lot of the establishment Republicans in Congress didn't want the violent ones pardoned, right?
Right.
But
and a bunch of them committed more crimes, Ron, remember. A bunch of them have since gone back into prison.
Correct. But then I think that what happened was when he pledged not to, he said he was going to do them on a case-by-case basis. But I think what he realized is once he waded into that quagmire of cherry picking, of I'm going to pardon this one, but not that one, it was going to be just nonstop, endless headaches for him among his base. They were going to, why didn't you pardon this guy? How come you pardon him? And he didn't want to deal with that for months and months. So he just decided, I'm pardoning all of them. So, and it kind of, yes, it caused a lot of outrage from the left and the mainstream, but his base was totally satisfied. There wasn't anybody in the MAGA base that was upset about the J6 pardons.
Right.
But these are in a different category. There's nobody out there defending these pardons on the right. There's none of the MAGA people. There's no Republican congressman going on TV and saying Juan Hernandez definitely should have been pardoned, or this fraudster should have been pardoned. Yeah. Or even today, he pardoned Henry Cuellar, a Democratic representative. I mean, there's nobody out there defending any of these pardons. So what do they say when they're asked about it? All they all give exactly the same answer. What about Biden? What about Obama? Yeah. They pardon this guy. They pardon that guy. That's all they do is just deflect it to some pardon that a Democrat president gave in the past.
Although Hakeem Jeffries went on TV this morning, actually, when that moment I was watching CNN, and he went and kind of said, oh, the president's done the right thing. I don't know why he's done it. This is with regard to pardoning the Democrat. And I was just like, Hakeem, you've lost your mind, man. I mean, like, talk about being on the wrong side of history. And it was like in the middle of two other segments that he was being asked about where he was against Trump, and then in the middle he's suddenly with Trump. I you know, maybe I don't understand the history of it enough, but Hakeem really kind of chooses his moments unwisely.
Yeah, Hakeem cares about one thing, and that's getting the majority. That's it. You know, I don't think he really cares that much about ideology. I don't think he cares a ton about policy. He think there's some policy things he cares about.
Yeah.
But at this point, he is single-minded. He is driven by one thing, and that is winning the majority and becoming speaker. And so
he needs all the
Henry
Democrats
Cuellar helps him do that, because he's the number one. He was the number one target for the Republicans. It's a swing district. It's a guy under indictment. He hadn't even filed for re-election yet. So the Republicans were banking on picking up this seat. So Mike Johnson probably didn't see this coming. The Republican side seem a little surprised by this pardon, because this is a seat they thought they were going to pick up. And now it's going to be, honestly, quite a bit harder to pick this up. And the other thing is, Cuellar hadn't even filed to run for re-election. He filed today, like literally like hours after she got the pardon from Trump, he filed for re-election. So, and Hakeem basically was like, hey, this gives us a better chance to win the majority, so I'm happy.
Right.
Whatever you want to take from that.
Let's take a quick break and come back. I want to talk about this first briefing for the new Pentagon press corps, which sounds like an interesting piece of work. We'll do that next on Uncovered. The guys at True Classic started with a simple mission to bring premium, comfortable clothing to the masses, because looking and feeling great shouldn't come with a designer price tag. And clearly people agree. With over 25 million shirts sold to 5 million customers and more than 200,000 five-star reviews, True Classic has become a staple in closets everywhere. But this brand isn't just about fabric or fit, it's about confidence, about helping people show up every day feeling put together without trying too hard. That's what makes True Classic the perfect gift this holiday season. Whether you're shopping for your dad, your brother, your partner, or now even the women and kids in your life, True Classic has something for everyone. The same premium comfort and perfect fit that built the brand are now available for the whole family. These pieces fit where they should, feel incredible, and don't break the bank. You get that tailored look without sacrificing comfort or blowing your holiday budget. I've been wearing True Classic for a while now, and you can feel the difference the moment you throw one on. It's tailored where you want it, relaxed where you need it, no bunching, no stiff fabric, no BS, just a clean, effortless fit that actually works for real life. So, skip the guesswork and the overpriced designer stuff. Give comfort, give confidence, give True Classic. You can find them at Amazon, Target, Costco, and Sam's Club, or head to trueclassic.com/uncovered to grab the perfect gift for everyone on your list. Have you ever fallen in love with something online only to see the price and then think, I just can't afford it? Well, that's where Dept.com comes in. It's a genius tool that helps you find high-quality, budget-friendly versions of the expensive items you've been eyeing. It's really easy to use. Just type Dept.com / in front of any product URL, and it shows you lookalikes that won't drain your savings account. And these aren't shady knockoffs. Most of the time, they're made in exactly the same factories, just sold under a different name, with a way scarier price tag. So that $6,000 couch that influencers are always lounging on, Dept will probably find it for $1,200. Same vibe, same plushness, but you don't have to sell a kidney to afford it. It's totally free, dangerously addictive, and blowing up on TikTok for good reason. So, if you've got expensive taste but not the budget to go with it, Dept.com is your new best friend. Go ahead and make your dream home happen without maxing out on your credit card. And here's the kicker. For a limited time, the first 10,000 people who go to Dept.com/uncovered will get 500 Dept points instantly. Redeemable for gift cards, no catch. But spots are limited, so don't wait. Use your Dept points and gift cards to make the most of your holiday shopping. Go to Dept.com/uncovered. Fresh start, same threat. Debt is a silent killer. It doesn't make noise, it just multiplies. Interest compounds, fees stack up, and before long, it's choking the life out of your finances. But the case isn't closed. PDS Debt has already helped hundreds of thousands escape, reduce what they owe, and take back control. Your way out starts now. Whether you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, or medical bills, PDS Debt has custom options to help you get out of debt. They go beyond the numbers to understand your unique financial situation and craft a personalized plan designed just for you. There's no minimum credit score required. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs, in your pocket. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, boasts thousands of 5-star reviews on Google, and holds a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. Why? Because PDS has helped hundreds of thousands of people get out of debt. Every month you wait costs you more in interest and fees. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best is right now. Don't wait for debt to strike again. Break free in 30 seconds. Get your free personalized assessment and the best option for you at pdsdebt.com/uncovered. That's pdsdebt.com/uncovered. pdsdebt.com/uncovered. Welcome back, and you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Ron, okay, let's talk about this Pentagon press secretary and this department that they've set up, this kind of Pentagon press corps. Why have they done this, and why now?
This is the very first press briefing that has been given by Kingsley Cortez, who is just a social media influencer type person, somebody who is just on Twitter posting stuff and built a following and MAGA content, and she has the Mar-a-Lago look And
Yep.
so she gets this job as spokesperson for Hegseth, which is a pretty good gig considering the fact that you don't really have to do anything because he doesn't have any press conferences, and neither does she. He hasn't had one yet. So he passes all the new rules about the Pentagon press corps. Virtually every single member of the Pentagon press corps, including Newsmax and Fox and others, refused to sign it. They all walked out. The whole press corps walked out. So what are they going to do? So they open it up to their new media
That's
press
right.
corps. And so now they've credentialed all these new people, and she holds her very first press conference with the new Pentagon reporters. Now, who were some of the people in the room? Well, the esteemed, well-established Pulitzer Prize winners like Matt Gaetz was there. Laura Loomer was another one. Nepo baby Carl Higbee, whose dad is a Newsmax host. James O'Keefe, who used to be with Project Veritas until they fired him for unethical conduct and swindling money. I mean, it was just like one Alex Jones's guy was there. It was just one person after another. It was just a freak show, and their questions were just off the wall. And I was just stunned because Washington Post, New York Times, and a few other mainstream media outlets who were kicked out of the Pentagon broke these major stories this week about Hegseth and the bombings and all. And they don't even have access to the Pentagon, but obviously their sources are still talking to them.
Right.
And so while they're breaking these huge stories, the new Pentagon press corps, I'm like, where are your stories? Because I follow all these nutballs. I'm like, where's your stories, guys? I keep waiting for these big stories you're going to write about the Defense Department. There are no stories. The only thing these guys are posting is selfies of themselves walking around the Pentagon. There's no stories coming from the press.
Yeah. Well, they're just play acting, aren't they? They're just like playing along. And isn't there this kind of image of I can confirm the former Washington Post Pentagon desk is now the Fearless Media desk. This was from
Fearless Media.
Yeah, Cam Hybee. I mean, this is just an example of like the kids have kind of taken over. I mean, these guys, they just look like jokers. And I get a sense that this is all contributing. We have to remind people that as distracting as this all contributes to the rise of an authoritarian regime where the media, the Ministry of Information controls the media. You've got far-right influencers now who are supposedly the Pentagon press corps, when of course they're nothing of the sort, because there never will be any stories. And as you say, right now, with these extrajudicial killings, with abductions, with various things going on, not to mention pardons, we really need a media that is a force to be reckoned with, and that's why it is literally left to us in the independent media space to do the heavy lifting. Let's take a look at this Pentagon press corps kind of first outing and see how she handled herself.
I would also like to take a moment today to welcome all of you here to the Pentagon briefing room as official new members of the Pentagon Press Corps. We're glad to have you. Legacy media chose to self-deport from this building, and if you look at the numbers, it's pretty clear why no one followed them. National trust in these mainstream media outlets has cratered to 28%, the lowest ever recorded. The American people don't trust these propagandists because they stopped telling the truth. So we're not going to beg these old gatekeepers to come back, and we're not rebuilding a broken model just to appease them. Instead, we're welcoming new media outlets that actually reach Americans, ask real questions, and don't pursue a biased agenda. The public has moved on from the old model, and so will the Pentagon. This is the beginning of a new era. We look forward to working with you to keep the American people informed and to ensure transparency. In the interest of transparency, I want to provide an update on the department's operations against narco-terrorists in the Western Hemisphere.
It's a bit like, sorry, I think my smoke alarm's going off here. It's a little bit like what's the word? Caroline Leavitt, isn't it?
Worse. I mean, I think Caroline Leavitt probably has quite a few more IQ points than Cortez there. It's just comical. I mean, I'm not sure what poll they cite, but of course, media is like lawyers. Everybody hates the media all the time, so they're always going to poll low. They're like Congress. They're never gonna have like a 60% approval rating. It's just one of those things. But when people think the media, they think like talking heads on TV and stuff. Pentagon reporters are not. They're not your average media. These are many of them war correspondents who have been in war zones, embedded with troops, been shot at. Some of them been injured. These are highly specialized people that cultivate contacts among the rank and file of the military. They tend to be some of the more conservative reporters even. So when she's talking about people don't trust the media, they're not talking about the Pentagon press. I would be willing to bet if you just surveyed them, what do you think of the people who cover the Pentagon or cover the U.S. military? Their approval rating would be substantially higher, and that even includes people who don't even know who they are. So that's one thing, but it goes to show you, like, this is what they want. That's what they want. They want Matt Gaetz. They want James O'Keefe and Alex Jones,
right? Because
they're not writing any stories. That's the point I'm making. You can't find any stories from any of the people in that room about the military. They haven't written any this week. They can't tell you what happened with Signalgate or with these strikes or what's going on in the Caribbean or Venezuela or overseas or anything. They don't know anything about anything. These are just social media influencers and Instagram models.
But we shouldn't expect them to.
That's what Hegseth wants.
Of course, because this is not a regular administration. This is, in its entirety, a criminal enterprise. It's a coup designed to deconstruct every department, including the media. And so by going after the media and media ownership and doing the whole kind of fake news propaganda, the thing that comes next is replacing the media with insiders and people that are prepared to do whatever it is the regime wants.
What they want is media who will take information that the Pentagon puts out and print that. So my question is this: what is the number one news story in America this week? It is the double strike, bombing the survivors.
Yeah.
Did the Pentagon tell us about that? No. They did not. They told us nothing. In fact, they released an edited video that only showed us one strike, and that was it. And it was played all over Fox, and all the media outlets played out their little 1-minute clip that they put out. But now we know, there's so much more to this story. And why do we know it? We don't know it because Hegseth volunteered it. We don't know it because Kingsley Cortez from that podium told us about it. Oh, no. We only know it because people very high up inside the military, close to this operation, contacted sources at the Washington Post. In fact, let me go to that for a second. Sources at the Washington Post who printed the story, who brought all of this to light. That's the only reason why we know about it. We would not know about it from any of the new media that they have in this room. We would never know. And by the way, the Washington Post reporter who broke the story, the kids who were sitting at that desk posted that they were sitting at his desk. They posted, this was the Washington Post Pentagon reporter's desk that we're now sitting at. It doesn't say that. Yeah, it says that right there.
Right.
That's Washington Post is the one who broke the story on the double strike. And the funny part is, Dan Lamont, who's the Washington Post reporter, responded to that post from Higbee. And by the way, Higbee, his dad is a Newsmax host. This is a Nepo baby situation. So he responded to that post saying, that's actually not my desk. That's the wrong desk. And the kid responded back saying, well, that's what the Pentagon told me. They told me that was the WAPO desk. And he's like, well, you're wrong. And by the way, you just violated the new policy of the Pentagon because you're only supposed to report what they tell you as fact, and what you reported is not factual. So and did you get approval to report the correction from Hegseth?
The irony.
I mean, it's just he was just having some fun with the kid. But the irony is that while this kid is bragging, I'm new media, I'm sitting at the WAPO guy's desk, the WAPO guy is literally breaking the biggest Pentagon story of the year while this kid is sitting at his desk.
The other thing that is going to happen more and more, I presume, is whistleblowing. as we've just described. And Trump has made whistleblowing a very negative thing. You know, in Europe and certainly in the UK, we respect whistleblowers, or at least we try to, and then the authorities try to respect whistleblowers. And that was one thing that surprised me about the US, is that people looked down on whistleblowers like they'd done a bad thing in some way, and they were trying to kind of pull one over the corporations or the government. And the importance can't be underestimated, especially when you have this kind of dictatorship in place now. And it's probably going to be the military, as we just described, you know, kind of dishing the dirt to the Washington Post, or it's going to be individuals and federal workers, ones that he hasn't fired. And so he's kind of made whistleblowing illegal now, though, effectively. I mean, he really has kind of laid that out in executive orders.
This is also why when he first came in, his first order of business was cracking down on leaks. Remember, that was giving everybody lie detector tests. And he fired 3 of his closest aides that he brought in his first month because he thought that they were leaking. He was suspecting them of talking to the press. They adamantly denied it, and they said that they were being falsely accused. But he went in there paranoid about people leaking and intimidating them by threatening them with polygraphs. But he has to know now that leaking continues. It continues at pace. And the reason why it's happening, not only are people being put in positions where they're afraid that they're going to be prosecuted or put in or get in trouble because of the things that these guys are telling them to do, but you have all these rivalries between them within the Trump administration, and they're all ratting each other out to the press. They all want to get each other in trouble.
Yeah.
So there's probably more leaks coming out of Trump 2 than there was even Trump 1, when you had Mark Meadows there who talked to the press, who leaked everything.
Yeah. Let's talk about Kash Patel for a second. He went on Laura Ingram's show on Fox, and they were spinning this story about why he was wearing a kind of FBI raid jacket, and it kind of became quite ridiculous. I'll show the clip and then we'll deconstruct.
They're saying, he refused to get off the plane in Utah after Charlie Kirk's assassination because he wanted a better fitting FBI raid jacket. Is that true? And does fashion really make the man, Kash?
It's 100% false. As you know, look, Laura, sadly, I was at 9/11 at Ground Zero in New York City on 9/11 because I was a White House representative honoring those victims and their names being read. You are very familiar with that. Then we made the immediate decision after Charlie got shot in the neck to fly to Utah unexpectedly to lead the manhunt to find the perpetrator in less than 33 hours because the FBI cut video, put it out in a press conference, and these people are worried about what I was wearing and what patches I was wearing. I was honoring my men and women at the FBI. One of my agents handed me a jacket and said, "Hey, boss, you should probably wear this. We're going into the command center." I said I'd be honored to wear that. And then another one handed me the SWAT team badge of the unit that was protecting the area where Charlie was assassinated. I wore that with pride. These people can talk about my appearances all they want, but look at the results. The FBI, this FBI, my FBI, the one that Dan and I are building here under President Trump, is succeeding in ways that no FBI has ever done so before. So the institutionalists and the anonymous reporters from the swamp DC bureaucracy are the ones we are crushing. And that's how I know we're winning. And if Eric Swalwell wants to come online and talk about what jacket size I wear, I'm happy to send him a women's medium so him and Fang Fang can go out again.
What's the story here? What's the scoop?
You know, it's just sad that the only time he's ever going to get questioned about this is from Laura Ingraham, who's not going to ask him, who's just going to like make fun of the whole thing and mock it and make a clown show out of it. And he gives that ridiculous answer, and that's the end of it, because he's not going to go in front of any legitimate media or give any legitimate interviews about this. So, and he's counting on the Fox audience to be stupid. But the problem is he's worn out his welcome, I think, even with Republicans. And that's why I say, you know, him and Hegseth are in a race right now to decide who's the first one that's going to be fired. I had Hegseth as my betting favorite for a long time, but I now have Patel as my betting favorite. And I only base that off the mood of Republicans. I don't base that off Democrats calling for people to resign or be impeached. That means nothing to me. I ignore all that noise. Okay, great. You know, call for him to resign on social media and get your clicks. Who cares? Like, that means nothing. That has no effect. What I look at is, what are the Republicans saying? Who are they defending? Who are they not defending? And in this particular case, I think that both of these two characters have become a serious liability for Republicans in Congress who are running for re-election next year. And these guys are dragging them down. So what is the story? The story is this: 24 senior, current and retired FBI agents, Republicans. It's a group, it's an organization that, but they're all anonymous. They won't put their names because of course they'd be fired, but they're all very senior people. And this group endorsed Donald Trump for president, trashed Joe Biden in 2024, trashed Chris Wray. They are 100% Trump supporters. They are the ones who put out like a 31-page report detailing all the incompetence. And what they said is 80% of the agents at the FBI think that Patel and Bongino are completely incompetent and have no business being there. 80%. And again, these are Republican Trump supporting agents. These are not like, deep state, like Cash wants to call them deep state. They're not deep state. All right. That's number one. Number two, who did they give their report to break the story? Miranda Devine. Who is Miranda Devine? She works for the New York Post. Who owns the New York Post? Rupert Murdoch. Miranda Devine is a far-right, Trump-supporting MAGA reporter, 100% Trump supporter. She is the one who broke the story. And when Cash and Bongino started attacking her, started attacking Miranda, and Miranda's just like, I'm on your team, guys. I'm just saying what these people are telling me. Right. So it's just ludicrous that he would go on there and try and claim, media, it's a deep state FBI. No, this is coming from inside his own house. His own people are sticking the knife in his back. And this is the problem, isn't it? And the jacket story, by the way, is just, here's what happened. Here's what I read this report. Okay. So what happened is, if you recall, the Kirk shooting, he was at a very expensive restaurant in New York City with his girlfriend that he had I think it was Rouse, right? It was very hard to get a reservation. That was Rouse. So that's where he was. And he had put out the tweet from the restaurant saying, we caught the guy, when they didn't catch the guy. Correct. Shit was hitting the fan. His phone blew up. He was ordered, get on a plane and go to Utah now. He had to leave there, jump on the plane, fly to Utah, didn't have his cool FBI gear. And we know how much Cash loves his gear. So he wouldn't get off the plane. This is what the report said. Wouldn't get off the plane until he had a cool, badass FBI jacket to wear. All he had was his polo shirt that he wore to dinner. And so they rummaged around because he's a small little dude and they needed to find a jacket that could fit him. And none of the male jackets fit him. So they had to find a female agent. This is where the joke comes in. And a female size medium gave him his jacket, but it didn't have cool patches on it. So then he wouldn't get off until they found him some cool patches to put on the jacket. And that's what he's talking about. So he claims, somebody just came up to me and said, here, boss, have my jacket. Yeah. No, that's not what happened. He was refusing to get off the plane until he had all his bling on before he went in front of the cameras. That's what happened. And again, not liberal media, Republicans put this out.
So the obsession with optics is endless with this guy. But we should remind people that he and Dan Bongino, his number two, were conspiracy theorist podcasters. That's what they basically did for a living before they became the head and deputy of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I mean, and so that's why this whole stuff about the deep state, it's so complex now, because they've arrived and they are effectively the deep state themselves, or the deep state never existed. And so they're having to reposition what the deep state means. And because there are there's no liberal media, there's no kind of Democrats left in the equation, and all the federal workers have been fired who wouldn't pledge their allegiance, they don't really have much to work with.
That's part of the problem. And that's a lot of the criticism that they're getting from the right, which is, you guys keep saying that you're taking on the deep state. Where is it? What have you done exactly? And that's the frustration you keep hearing from the MAGA supporters is, they expected Hillary to be in jail. These guys made big promises. They expected Chris Wray to be in jail. They couldn't even put Comey in jail. They screwed that up. I mean, everything that these guys promised, release the Epstein files, everything these guys promised to their MAGA supporters going into office, they have not delivered. And that's why I say that Kash is probably and Bongino are probably the first to go, because it's the MAGA base that's furious with them. It's not right. It's not the other people. And so they're in very serious trouble. I predicted January Kash would be fired after the holidays, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, interesting. There goes the alarm again. Let me show this clip about. Yeah, it's all burning down. I'm going to show this clip about Tennessee, and then we'll talk about it because of the elections.
Melissa, what do you look at when you see this as a larger picture for the House of Representatives about a 5 or 6 point advantage right now for Republicans?
Well, when you look in general to what happened in New Jersey, what happened in Virginia, what's happened to every special since the president was elected in 2024, you've seen almost 100% Democratic dominance. And the fact that we're having this conversation in a district where President Trump won by 22 points and where the predecessor won by, I believe it was 20 to 22 points, you know, those other states and those other races were flashing yellows. This should be a flashing red for Republicans going into the midterms. They need to come up with a border plan. They need to come up with a budget, and they need an economic vision and policy that's going to work, because not only is the American electorate volatile, they're also hyper impatient right now. So, you know, let's all be really honest about what's going on here. The Republicans have a big problem going into the midterms that they've got to get their arms around fast, or they're going to lose control of the House.
Okay, so explain what the strategy is here and the results of the election as we see them now.
Well, I mean, this is another bellwether election that everybody was looking at, to where this is about the safest Republican seat you can get. It's in mostly rural Tennessee, with a little piece of Nashville in there. What they did is Nashville used to be a Democratic seat, but the Republicans in Tennessee split it into 4 pieces to make sure that there are no Democratic seats out of it. So this seat is now a plus 22 seat. It's a district that Trump won by 22 points in 2024. The congressman who had the seat, Mark Green, won it by 21.5 points. So those are pretty good, consistent barometers that it's a plus after it was redistricted. People are constantly going and pointing to 2016, it was redistricted in 2020. It's a totally different district. So there's just so much bad data out there. So it's a plus 22 district. So everybody's looking at, well, I mean, it's virtually impossible for a Democrat to win. And so many Democrats got their hopes up that they were going to pull the upset. But I mean, I never thought that. But yes, what I was doing is, again, listening to a lot of the Republicans in the House, the Republican conference meeting that they had. And the reporting out of that was, if this was a single digit win by the Republican, where they felt like they had a very strong candidate in Van Epps, and they felt like the Democratic candidate was too progressive, too liberal for Tennessee, for that district. And she had said a few things in the past that hurt her, like she hates country music. You know, that was one thing. And she said that she hated it because she's from Nashville, and Nashville has become like the bachelorette party capital of the South. And it's all like country music themed bachelorette parties. And a lot of people who live in Nashville don't like the fact that it's become that. So that's what she was complaining about. But, you know, that they use that against her. Of course, they know how to spin these things. But so that was the issue, was they felt like if it was single digits with that kind of a situation where the National Party is spending millions of dollars and it's the only race in town and Trump is weighed in and Mike Johnson went to Tennessee and campaigned.
That's right.
This is going to be a big problem. And it came out 8 points, 8 points in a R plus 22 seat. So that's the issue. It's 14-point underperformance by the Republicans. And so you hear the spin today where the Republicans are trying to spin it a lot of different ways. Oh, we always struggle in off-year elections. Trump's not on the ballot, et cetera, et cetera. But behind the scenes, they're all freaking out. And this is yet another example following Virginia and the other special elections that were last month, New Jersey. This is yet another sign that things are looking bad. And when you hear Trump or Mike Johnson come out and say, everything's fine, we're fine, we expected this, a lot of the Republicans are going, they're upset that that's their take, because they don't think that they're taking this sufficiently serious. And it's the affordability issues, cost of living issues that they don't think that their leadership is taking seriously.
Yeah. I noticed that Trump has started using the word affordability in every other sentence now. And this came from Mamdani's win, wasn't it? The affordability was the kind of buzzword for that campaign. And then obviously Trump's advisors are like, well, you need to start saying it too. Not doing anything about it, of course, not bringing about any policies to help people financially, but just to use the word affordability. And now he's saying, I am the affordability president.
No,
but as you say, it's
like
not enough.
24 hours, though.
Yeah.
I mean, now he's mocking it. Now he's saying it's a hoax. That's the problem. They get him, his advisors tell him to say that, but he can't stick to the script because what hit in his head, everything is perfect. Everything is great.
Yes.
Prices have come down. Yes. And so whenever he's asked about affordability now, what he says is, that's all nonsense. It's a hoax. Things are affordable. Prices have gone down. Everything's great. And Republicans just, I read their reactions to these things and I follow them, and they always cringe. They're like, oh my God, please, we're begging you, stop saying that. Please stop. What they want to do is they want Trump to say, they want Trump's messaging to be this, which is, things are really bad now, but it's all because of Biden. It's all because of and it's all because of the shutdown. Yes, things are bad. Everything's affordable, housing costs, everything is bad, but we're fixing it and things are going to be great next year. That's what they want the message to be. But Trump refuses to go along with that program because he doesn't want to admit that things are bad.
Right. He also couldn't define affordability if you asked him. Doesn't actually kind of...
No.
He has no empathy for what that even means. And this kind of goes back to him saying you need ID to buy groceries and stuff. He's just completely out of touch with it. Talk to me about Alina Harbour. We haven't heard much from her recently. Hasn't she just kind of lost her appeal? And now she's trashing Afghan refugees, even though she's of Iraqi descent herself.
Yeah, well, this one surprised me because she was brought on Fox the night that her appeal was denied, and the appeal's clear cut. She's serving illegally, and every day that she continues to stubbornly sort of hang on and fight this thing, it puts every conviction in jeopardy, every indictment in jeopardy, every search warrant with her name on it, everything with her name on it could be challenged on appeal and overturned. All the work and that's a huge prosecution office in New Jersey, all of the work that all of those rank and file prosecutors have been doing all year could be wiped out, thrown away, and thrown in the trash can, start all over. And yet she continues to refuse to leave. The law is quite clear. You can be appointed for 120 days. And then you must, during that 120-day window, you have to be confirmed by the Senate.
And this is like the Lindsay Halligan story, isn't it?
It's
the same thing.
If you're not confirmed, you have to leave. You have to go.
Yep.
And she didn't have the votes. John Thune said, I'm not bringing it to the floor because she doesn't have the votes. And instead of Trump appointing somebody else, he just said, no, I'm reappointing. Yeah, Pam Bondi is reappointing her as an interim U.S. attorney now. And it's like, you can't do that. The law is clear. These were the 3-panel judges, 2 Bush judges and an Obama judge overturned it unanimously. It's clear cut, but she refuses to leave. So they brought her on to talk about that. But then it just so happened that the same day, this was actually like a couple days after the Afghanistan guy shot the National Guard service members. And so I'm not sure exactly how they ended up asking her about that, maybe because she's a U.S. attorney in New Jersey or something. But then she proceeded to say that none of them should have been allowed in on hardship. These were people who worked with the United States government who would have been killed had we left them behind. And I thought, wait a minute, her parents came here on an asylum claim from Iraq. Yeah. and I looked up their asylum claim because I was wondering what it was. How did they get into the United States? And it was like in the early 80s. And it was because they were Christian. And they said that the government there was persecuting Christians. Therefore, they were allowed to come to the United States and they got U.S. citizenship. Also helped that her dad happened to be a cardiologist. So I'm sure that they were happy to let him in on those grounds too. So here she is, a child of Iraqi immigrants who were granted asylum by the United States. And she is saying that none of the Afghanis who worked with the United States government should have been allowed in under an asylum claim. They should have been left behind to be killed by the Taliban. It was just shocking to me, and it shows her complete lack of moral compass.
Let's take a look.
There was no process. We were allowing open borders. We were allowing criminals to come into our country. And then there were individuals that were saying that this should be a safe harbor, a safe haven. Why? America is America because we protect our own. We don't allow this to happen. So when you say we, I want to be very clear. It is not a we. It is not the Trump administration. It was not Trump 1, and it is most certainly not Trump administration that is currently happening.
Yeah, it's just pure racism. And the saddest part of the story is, and this is the same with Marco Rubio as well. It's like ignoring your heritage so that you can be a racist in this regime it's just so offensive to anybody. I mean, Trump's been saying stuff about Somalia in the last week, which is also, it's actually caused the Somalian leadership to actually step up and have to kind of take this on head on. It's just base white supremacy that comes from this kind of central Christian nationalist movement. They can't help themselves.
Here's the thing. That guy, the guy who ended up shooting the National Guard people, had a stronger asylum claim under the law, under morality, under whatever you want to look at, than Habaz's parents did. Had a much strong. He worked with the United States military. He absolutely, the day after we left Afghanistan, he would have been put in prison and likely killed.
Yes.
Her parents, that would not have happened. They wanted the ability to freely practice their religion here in the United States, but really they wanted the economic opportunity also, right? So that guy had a much stronger case, and that guy was thoroughly vetted by the Trump administration and granted asylum. And by all reporting that has come out since this shooting has happened, that this guy was fine, normal, not a problem. And he very recently in the last few months became radicalized and just went off the deep end, and this happened. So this isn't anything that I would blame on the Trump administration, the Biden administration, or anybody in politics. This is crime in America. This happened. This kind of stuff happens all the time. And unfortunately, in this particular case, the guy happened to be an immigrant, and that's why it became a political issue.
You could say, though, that by militarizing the streets and putting the National Guard places where they're not needed, a la DC and many other cities now, that you are effectively creating a tension that didn't otherwise exist and giving a target. And that's why once this shooting happened, Trump's response was the opposite of the right thing to do. He said, okay, 500 more National Guard on the streets of DC. It's preposterous that it's even happening. But I was thinking about how must the National Guard, these individuals feel being put in the line of fire, knowing that the streets are now more dangerous because of Donald Trump.
When this isn't even their job.
Correct.
I mean, when they signed up, they thought, I'm going to do my 1 weekend a month. I'm going to do my 2 weeks of training during the summer. I'll do my boot camp. If a war happens overseas, there's a chance I could get called up. Yes. And that's pretty much what I'm signing up for. None of them thought when they signed up, they were going to be picking up trash in DC and getting shot at, So you raise a good point, a point that I didn't bring up, but because that's also a point that Democrats on social media have been criticized very harshly from the right about, which is pointing out that this probably wouldn't have happened, of course, if Trump hadn't had the National Guard in the city. And that made me think, sure, because look, police officers, I think the numbers, I looked them up a while back. I think right around 150 police officers die in the line of duty in the United States every year, right around there. And many thousands more get injured. Most of them actually are car accidents, not shootings. So, but the point is that law enforcement officers come into contact with dangerous people every single day. They're trained for that. It's their job. They're trained on how to diffuse situations, how to spot dangerous situations, things that National Guard people are not trained for. And yet, even though these officers with extremely high training levels, they still get shot at, they still get killed. So now we're putting these National Guardsmen in harm's way who don't have that training. It's inevitable that something is going to happen with these people. But I almost think that Trump wants it to happen. He wants
100%,
like
Ron, 100%.
Because it gives him
this
is Reichstag fire. This gives him the pretext to invoke Insurrection Act.
Yeah. Yeah. And now today he announced going to New Orleans as well. Just, expanding this kind of militarization of the country. And, come election time, you're going to have all the military on the streets hanging around polling places too. So it's all part of the plan, undoubtedly. That moment when he was asked if he would go to the fallen guardsman's funeral, and he said, I haven't really thought about it. Where West Virginia, yes. Well, I did win West Virginia by quite a large margin,
There you go.
And it was like, oh my God, you're literally
He immediately
saying,
went to himself in politics.
100%.
When he's
saying the
asked
quiet
about the
parts
guard.
out loud.
Yeah.
Finally, let's talk about this Sabrina Carpenter scandal, because we know that the White House and DHS, they're putting out these videos and clips all the time of imagery of, this one is at the White House. It's an image of an ICE officer or a federal officer. Have you tried this one? And the word bye-bye and a wave. And then Sabrina Carpenter replies, because they've used her music. We can't play it, obviously, for copyright reasons. But she says, this video is evil and disgusting. Do not ever involve me or my music to benefit your inhumane agenda. So that's kind of how this all started. And, the regime likes to use popular music to try and popularize this kind of horrific work that they're doing. And then there was a response that came from the White House spokeswoman, Abigail Jackson. She sent a statement, and it said, here's a short and sweet message for Sabrina Carpenter. We won't apologize for deporting dangerous criminal, illegal murderers, rapists, and pedophiles from our country. Anybody who would defend these sick monsters must be stupid, or is it slow? I mean, what's your take here?
Well, one thing that I talk about all the time for a long time is those low information voters, those people out there who don't watch the news, don't watch us, don't watch politics, aren't on political social media. They're on Instagram, they watch sports. They're kind of tuned out of the whole political realm. They don't vote, many of them. If they do vote, they kind of don't even know who they're voting for, half the time. They're certainly not people who are going to vote in like a midterm. They might vote in a presidential election. So here you have a pop star who's a multi-Grammy award winner. She's nominated this year for Album of the Year. So she's not only a very successful recording artist, she's hot as hell right now. I don't mean looks wise. I'm talking about her career is red hot. Her fan base is very large. And so what they decide to do, they put out one of their reprehensible ICE videos. By the way, they just put out another one and used the Steve Miller Band, his music as well. And Steve Miller is a big Democrat and would not be happy. But I haven't said anything about that yet. But because I'm still dealing with Sabrina. So Sabrina, I saw her. They used her song in this montage video of ICE taking down all these people and dragging them down the street in handcuffs and crying. And then they put her music, and the song that they used was actually about sex positions. And they used that song because they liked the riff, the lyric, to overlay over this. And she got wind of it and posted that response. I saw it pretty quickly because I watched the ICE video stuff. It was put out by the White House. And I retweeted her response. At that time, it had maybe, 100,000 views. So this was yesterday, right? This was yesterday. So I just looked it up just now as you pulled that up. How many views does it have now, 24 hours later, her post?
I don't know. Go on.
95 million. 95 million.
Wow. Wow.
Why the hell is the White House Political Communications Office picking a fight with a pop star and going after her? And all she did was say, I don't want you using my music in your disgusting ICE videos. Please stop using my music. They decide, instead of just taking it down like they have done in the past when artists complain, they decide with this new spokesperson that they just hired, she thinks she'll be cute and funny and own the libs and go back at Sabrina Carpenter. And that blows up on it. Literally had like 1.1 million views when that press secretary put out her statement. And now it's at 95 million 24 hours later.
Shit.
And her, keep in mind, this is reaching 95 million people is not political junkies. You're reaching all of those low information voters that both parties want very desperately to sign up as new voters. And you're just like dumping them into the lap, pushing them into the arms of Democrats. Why? So you can steal her song for a video? It's like so ridiculously unnecessary and stupid, but that's who these people are. They're dumb.
They've been given the kind of freedom to own the libs, and in the meantime, they're kind of failing desperately. It's so interesting. I was looking at the list that the White House kind of replied with, Abigail Jackson replied with, and she basically lists everything that Donald Trump does. Dangerous criminal, illegal murderer, rapist, pedophile. So, talk about saying the quiet parts out loud.
Saying, don't use my music without permission.
Yeah.
It's like, and then they come back at her with like, you're defending murderers and rapists.
Yeah.
She's like,
it doesn't make sense. It's not the correct response. And I think people are smart enough to recognize that there's too much of a stretch involved there. And that is always the thing. It's like with Kash Patel on Laura Ingraham. Like, there's always this position. And Caroline Levitt uses this all the time. It's like, well, you don't want us to be doing all of this good work? And it's like a kind of blanket excuse, but very light on detail. Okay, we have to finish, but I'm so grateful for the chat, as usual. We'll come back next Wednesday and bring you another Uncovered. You can download the audio podcast later tonight and check out our sponsors in the description, and we'll do it again next week. Thanks a lot, Ron.
All right, see you next week, everyone.